Okay, I'm going to open it up to the panel discussion. Jason's still on the line. AJ is. There's Ekavula. John Lee is participating in a Microsoft meeting right now, but he may be coming in a little bit late. So we've got plenty of questions here. I've got a couple for AJ, but before we get to those, let me make sure I get all the earlier ones. Yeah, this is not on any of the topics we discussed today, but it's a good question, and I feel that there are some of you are qualified to answer this question. So the question is, what's the best way to target B2B audiences in Google Ads?
All right, who wants that one? I'll play backup hitter on this one.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, go for it.
Well, I think my preferred route, if I do have budget for LinkedIn ads, I want to drive that B2B traffic to my website, and then I want to retarget that traffic with Google and or Facebook, but ideally both. And I know this doesn't really fit the criteria because you had to get the traffic originally anyway, but staying in front of them on Google and Facebook is very, very efficient. So I like that, assuming that you have enough traffic to meet the minimums to run ads.
All right.
But anyone who's specialized in paid search in the last 5 years want to like chime in?
Yeah, I will. I would suggest that you look at custom audience targeting and affinity audience targeting in the Google Display Network. Those have worked really well for me for B2B audiences, and the ads can be tailored. I won't go into detail of how to create them and best practices, but the ads can be tailored for the company, for the advertiser, and the target audience. So definitely something to look into if you're trying to get those expensive, hard to find B2B audiences. Let's see, I see John's back. Hi, John.
Hello.
Let's see, scrolling through previous questions. Oh,
Hey, John,
go ahead.
While we're finding that, John, do you have any thoughts on B2B through paid search?
In what context exactly?
Basically, the best ways to use paid search in B2B. So it's a little bit broad, but
pretty broad, yeah. I mean, from a keyword perspective, you know, it's all about understanding the journey, right? The phases that a person's going through as they're, you know, they don't even know what they need exactly, but they've got an inkling like that there's a gap in their strategy, and then to what's the next set of queries that they may be searching for because they've got a better idea, right? They've seen all the competition, all the options, and they're whittling it down, right? Like thinking through that, that's always like it was always one of my favorite parts of B2B for search was parsing that out. You can make a lot of assumptions and come up with a pretty decent strategy. And then of course, as is always, you learn from the query data and say, okay, here's where I was right, here's where I was wrong, let's improve. But I would say from a Microsoft advertising perspective, of course, I got to throw in the LinkedIn profile targeting, you know, an incremental lift, and more importantly, just to say, okay, you know, I want to isolate this bucket of people. Let's say somebody that works at Microsoft, I'm willing to pay 10%, 20%, 100% more per click. That's pretty powerful stuff from a B2B perspective, although I would argue you could use those audiences for anything. But for B2B, it's of particular importance.
Agreed. Okay, another question that came in while Jason was speaking, but I think any of us can handle this. Any advice for targeting Gen X for clothing?
Start with age, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of your first go-to. I mean, goodness. They're probably still pretty stuck in Facebook. I'm sure some of them have migrated over to, you know, the Instagrams and maybe the TikToks and the whatnot. But
yeah, I think, you know, just in addition to the age targeting, you know, that particular demographic is spending a lot of time in stories, and so that's a situation where you do want to make sure you have effective ad creative for those placements, because they love video, they love stories, and you know, that's where they're hanging out and spending time. So make sure that you have the right creative to be in those places.
Yeah, and to add to that, Instagram stories is huge. If you're looking for ideas, look at other brands that are doing something similar, or even something different with that target audience that is skewing a little bit younger. Look at Facebook's ad library. There's some really great ways to look for other brands to get inspiration. Maybe take what other brands are doing that are bigger and save that time and money and start testing something that's authentic to your brand, kind of in the same way that they're doing it. You know, in addition to Instagram, if you have additional budget, you know, Snap and TikTok might be other areas where you can find those younger demographics.
Mike Friedman chimed in and said that Microsoft did some interesting research on how Gen Xers like themes of diversity and inclusion.
I'll grab the link for that. That's our Marketing with Purpose research that was done last year. There's a lot of interesting data points, but that was definitely one of the call outs.
Cool.
With apparel in general, it's all about the image, right? And so, I mean, product ads, shopping are what they are, right? You're not going to get super creative with that, right? The format only allows for so much. But when you think about the social element, native advertising, all of those pieces, there's really an opportunity to think outside the box. And so, I had talked with somebody last year, and they had an apparel brand, not necessarily for Gen X, although that was certainly a big chunk of their audience, but it was collegiate sports. Think that realm, right? So licensed gear, but specifically like brightly colored pants and shorts and shirts, things like that. And they really started to branch out and had fun with their images. And once they did that, like developed a personality visually and with their creative, that's when the magic happened, right? That's when click-through rates shot up, conversion rates shot up. And so I think with apparel in particular, don't be afraid to have fun. Don't just have people standing there in your clothes. Like think bigger, do something more.
Exactly. And just one more thing to add to that, when it comes to creative, product shots are good, but we work with a lot of apparel brands. And we've seen that doing lifestyle shots that are particularly video do outperform static images or just single product shots. And user-generated content.
Right. By the way, I made a mistake. That should have been about Gen Z, not Gen X.
Oh.
Does that change anyone's answer?
A little bit, but I'd stay more on Instagram and Facebook compared to Snap and TikTok, because those are a little bit younger, but, you know, test them out and find out what works best for you. Good.
Okay.
So Gen Z, I think that's the Zennial, right? That's the old millennial, which is this guy. So like I wear dad jeans and plaid shirts. So like, I don't know. Take from that what you will.
I think you have pegged yourself.
I have.
Well, let's see. This one came up when Jason was speaking. There's a particular challenge for service-based advertising. Let's refine this a little bit by saying local service-based advertising. Sydney was looking for inspiration for animation and videos. Just off the bat, it's not intuitively obvious what kind of animation or some examples of animation that would work well.
So I think a couple places I would start are the actual Facebook for Business site, where there is a swath of creative case studies and examples and best practices, and you can, filter and search by the industry you're looking to, the platform you're interested in, the ad placement. And so that's an important place to start. I think as far as, adding motion, again, it doesn't have to be, something that's going to win, a Cannes Lion award, right? Like, you can generate and get a lot of performance just by having, the logo move, or, having some of the copy and text actually transition in motion, or, maybe it's, let's say your service is lawn care, having the actual, color of the lawn, even within a static image, change from, brown to yellow to bright green, is a great way to add some of those kinds of elements to the creative. And so there's ways for you to do it. So I would definitely check out some of those case studies.
Good.
Yeah, great advice. And if I can add to that, if you don't have any video and maybe you're developing it, you don't have the resources yet, within Ads Manager, you can find the video creation kit. So you can upload static images and add some subtle motion. It's free, it's built in, and there's different templates. So anything with just subtle motion, whether it's text or just the transitions between images, that works really well too.
Just got a comment from Dawson, who's recommending a book called Hook Point, which talks about how to find what will make people stop scrolling and pay attention to the ads. Sounds great. So how do you guys, this is to the panelists, how do you guys brainstorm what will cause someone to stop? What did Jason call it? Thumb catching?
I'm stopping creative.
Yeah.
Right. How do you brainstorm what will cause someone to thumb stop and pay attention? Brainstorming.
Well, especially on LinkedIn and Facebook, because the color palette is so blues, grays, and whites, you can really get a lot of mileage of just having creative that pops from that. So orange is kind of the opposite of blue. So if you saturate heavy in oranges, reds, greens, pinks, that can help at least get attention. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'm sure someone else has good advice.
I was just gonna say the fast moving, because like I feel like the examples that I've seen that work really well are, again, like if you have things that are moving really quickly in the image or in the moving image or the video, that tends to work really well. The other thing I'll just add is about if you are gonna have faces or people, you want up close shots, and so sometimes people will take a TV ad that they've done, which is, been made to watch, 10 feet away on a big wide screen. That typically doesn't work well. And so you want to cut it to make sure that you're close in on the face. And like I mentioned before, that the face is actually facing the consumer. And that we see a lot of big improvements in terms of impact when you apply those.
Good.
Yeah, there is a difference between looking at something and paying attention to it. It's what other panelists say is for sure true. Faces looking directly at the user grab the some attention, but and even bright colors and moving things grab attention, but it's true that also the contrary, something that seems quite a side function more than a banner, more than an advertising, is going to have more attention from the user. The user is not there for chance, is there for looking at something in a site. So that site has a credit open in the mind of that user. If he thinks that he is clicking on something belonging to that site and not simply a banner and advertising, maybe it has more attention than something clearly looking as an ads.
Good point. By the way, that's Gianpaolo LaRusso, our Paid Search Association board member from which city in Italy?
Bologna.
Bologna.
Yeah, Bologna.
So welcome to the fun.
My pleasure, of course, being here.
Another good question. This is a paid search question that Microsoft and Google could answer because it has to do with a feature that they have in common. How about some inspiration for how to layer audiences on search campaigns?
Yes, do it. So I mean, look, there's an endless number of combinations, right? And you've got to start with the obvious. Start at the bottom of, okay, they've been to the site, they've not converted, duh, okay, and use that as your building point to start to think through, okay, what else is there? You know, there's the, we got to go back and forth between, you know, observation and targeting, or, you know, bid versus bid and target, and thinking through that as well. And so there's merit to actual layering. It's saying, okay, I've got audience, remarketing audience, I've got in-market, I've got all these different options. And yes, you can stack those within a given, you know, campaign or ad group. I think that there can be an argument for that. But I think more times than not, there's also an argument to say, okay, what if I break these out and start to test them in isolation? And so that would be the target, right? And you know, or target and bid. Because within market in particular, like that's such a powerful thing that in my mind, like test it alone, right? And so, yeah, that's duplicating effort, as it were, right? You're gonna have the same keywords in multiple spots, but oftentimes I think that the payoff is certainly gonna be there. You know, and Yuki asked the question, I accidentally clicked the wrong button initially to say answer live, but I did reply to her. You know, there's further unique opportunities, again, LinkedIn profile targeting, and that further adds in another curveball. And so when it comes to layering, like, I know that there are probably like case studies and things like that out there, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But it's I would say test them, scaled, layered together, but more times than not, I would come to the table and recommend also test them in isolation, including LinkedIn profile targeting, at least if nothing else, just to understand where does it put me in terms of data, in terms of performance. Chances are, like, you could even have the same ads in both different instances, and in isolation, a completely different version, different copy is going to pop and perform better. And so until you do the test and get the data, you're not going to know.
Good point. So would you say at the very least, or start with remarketing lists, audiences?
It's the go-to. Yeah, remarketing, I would say, like, in-market continues to come up in the list, but those two, and I think I even referenced it in my presentation earlier, like those two are really the tent poles, definitely on the Microsoft advertising side, but I would argue on the Google side as well. Mm-hmm. Those two really prop up everything that's happening from an audience perspective. But remarketing, in my mind, because it's your data, what's happening on your site is really the go-to.
Yeah, I want to put another plug in here about Google Display Network's custom intent audiences, where the advertiser can pretty tightly describe the audience they want to reach, and through algorithm magic, the audience that you target sees your ads and is more likely to click on them. Okay, let's see. Automagical, all right. Just to pause here to say that we are recording these sessions and we will make them available to the attendees. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that Christy Olson has joined us, another board member from Microsoft, and Lisa Ressler from Big Click Co., another board member. Let's see, I need more questions.
Can I add something onto John's?
Sure.
I've been doing a lot with our audience layering retargeting. So I was in John's previous role, and now I'm the head of paid search across all of Microsoft businesses. And we've been relooking at how do we use our audiences based on a combination of the audience we are trying to reach, but also understanding where the person's at in the purchase funnel and re-guiding and redirecting consumers to the right pages on the site, as well as where we think they should be going based on the intent behind the keywords they're using. And what I can say, I won't give all of the results in the back end, but we have a lot of overlap, as you can imagine, across Microsoft, where let's use Surface as an example. We have people interested in actually purchasing the Surface laptop, but we also have people that are just doing research and keywords by consumer intentional intent and purchase-based intent on the words they're using, putting audience or top, determining custom pages on the site that we take them to let them self-select where they are in the funnel. And we've seen the conversion rates increase pretty substantially by doing that type of targeting, and then building our remarketing list for search after they've selected a path, so that as they do any future searches, we guide them down the right path in the purchase area. So you can really start putting together your consumer journey maps of understanding the user, what they engage with and how they engage, and directing them, and then using your keywords and your ad copy and landing pages as levers for where you guide and direct them on their purchase path. So really consider thinking about that. And as John said, you can do a lot of layering on top of each other, but you want to make sure that you are not so complex that you can't manage it moving forward. And that is the challenge if you do too much layering and continue adding audience upon audience upon audience. Are you narrowing the window too much and reducing your targeting breadth and capabilities? Or are you doing it in a way that's manageable in the future?
Good, thank you, Christy. Okay. What book would you recommend to someone who's starting out in paid search? I'm going to answer that. First of all, mine is too old. So if you want to know the ancient history of paid search, you can certainly pick that up. I like Brad Geddes' book, and the other one I like is Andrew Goodman's. Both of them have been updated for modern times, and they're both, I think, excellent intros. The other plug I would give would be to Perry Marshall's materials. I think that he has a book available through Amazon, but he's definitely the one I learned from in ancient history. Okay, I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. Any last questions?
There was one in the chat I just answered. Grant Sexton had asked, and hi Grant, any advice on best strategies for uncovering new keywords in paid search to garner extra traffic? And so, there's some kind of fundamental pathways to that. One we were somewhat touching on with the audience and audience layering conversation, but audience plus match type experimentation to see what you start to match to. DSA, of course, I think is what I talked about last year for the show, right? That's one of the coolest ways, I would argue, to uncover and discover new queries. But there's a ton of other pathways. One as simple as simply having inter-team or intra-team brainstorming sessions, right? What is sales seeing? What is marketing seeing? What is the C-suite seeing? And just kind of talk it through, reading customer feedback verbatims and things like that. I mean, again, keyword ideas can and should come from just about everywhere. And so I don't know that I've ever seen an exhaustive list.
I've got two more that are brand new. One of them is by Kirk Williams, another PSA board member, and he'll be speaking this week. And that is called PPC, Confessions of a PPC Professional. And then also Fred Valles, another PSA board member, speaking on Friday, did a good job in his ebook about PPC and AI.